This being a very internet conference, we thought that it would be more interesting to spend some time to talk about all the innovations and everything that has to do with the internet and mobility inside France Telecom. And the first question I would have is that you just launched the iPad into some stores in France and in some other countries. What are your first impressions, first feedbacks from the customers in the Orange stores?
Good morning to everybody first. Yes, we sell the iPad in our stores. We began this only on Friday, so it's a little early to give any figures or even some impressions. But we are quite confident in the potential of our distribution network to be successful in selling the iPad. The iPad has been clearly one of the major events in our digital world in 2010, and I'm sure that this will be a very popular gift for Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any targets in terms of volumes and numbers you'd like to sell?
No, we don't have targets, but we think that clearly selling the iPad with a tariff plan at an affordable price will be a nice opportunity for the geeks of Europe.
Mm-hmm. In how many countries will you sell the iPad, did you say? How many countries will the iPad be sold by Orange?
We have launched the iPad simultaneously in France, in the UK, in Spain for the time being, and we are thinking of selling the iPad also in some other European countries, probably 10 countries.
10 countries. Does it make economic sense for you to subsidize the iPad? There is close to a €100 subsidy. Does it make sense? I mean, how fast will you recoup this investment in a sense?
You know, it is basically the same economic model as the model for smartphones or any kind of phone. It's a contract with a tariff plan and with an access to the network with a 2-year commitment, which is, let's say, in the average in Europe. In the UK, it's usually 3 years. In other countries, it can be less, but basically the contract offers an access to some specific conditions to the network and a 2-year commitment, and this is the basis of a subsidy.
Okay, and the iPhone, you've been selling the iPhone now for many years. Do you expect it to still be a kind of a major hit this Christmas? There is no new model, and many people already have one. Do you still see people buying new iPhones, or is there kind of slowing down?
In fact, the iPhone 4 has been very successful. I would say maybe surprisingly successful. And I'm sure that for Christmas it will still be successful. May I maybe just remind that we are at Orange the second seller of iPhones in the world, just after AT&T. We have sold more than...
Because you sell it in how many countries?
We sell it in almost 30 countries, in fact. And we have sold more than 3 million iPhones so far. It's about 6% of the total amount of number of iPhones sold in the world.
Okay, and does it mean that you have a special treatment from Apple in that sense? Do you have some kind of... do you get the phone in bigger volumes than others in that sense?
We have a good business relationship with Apple because I think they see us as a solid and reliable partner for their devices. But as you know, they are quite tough in business, and we have to be efficient. It's a win-win partnership, clearly, because we have been very happy to sell the iPhone massively in our footprint. We think that Apple really brought a major contribution to the digital economy and world in recent years. But yes, they are quite hard people in business. Okay. But you know that.
The iPhone in France is how many, in terms of percentage, how much of your base of customers has moved to the iPhone? Is it? Do you have the figure in mind, or?
Today we sell about 1 phone out of 3 as a smartphone. Smartphone covering the iPhone, but clearly, fortunately, other devices also. And the part of the iPhone is about 20% of the sales, not of the basis of customers. This is more or less the figures.
And do you see in the US, Android platforms are overtaking iPhone? Do you see that happening in France? Has it already happened, or?
You know, I think that the ambition of Android platform is clearly not comparable to iPhone model or Apple model. Apple is not a company, in my view, that is going to provide 50 or 60% of the world market because it's still expensive devices. And then, as you know, it's a coherent proprietary approach and system that clearly has been able to find a very substantial
But it's a large niche. It's not going to be
Yes, it's a niche. It's more or less a niche, a large niche, a very attractive niche, but a niche. Android is a global, as a global target. And clearly, Android is available on any kind of devices coming from a lot of different manufacturers. And so it's clearly Android is today accounts for more for
in terms of devices in France
market
already.
Share in the world than Apple. In France, I think we must be in the same range, but clearly Android has a potential to grow much more than Apple systems.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of talks about the increase in mobile data and the fact that it had a negative impact in a sense on your network. It was good for revenues, but at the same time it was creating traffic jam on the networks. How much of the traffic, or how much of the part of the pipe are occupied today by data, your mobile phone?
Today, the mobile data traffic absorbs a larger part of bandwidth than voice and SMS. Much larger.
Much larger.
Yes, definitely in France, but in the world, in fact. And we think that in 2 years' time, there will be 10 more traffic.
10 times more.
10 times more data traffic in the network than today. So it is a real explosion that we attend. And first, I would say that it's a good news. It's a good news because it means that there are new uses and there is an area for growth for a lot of people, service providers, for some new devices like tablets or new screens. And then clearly it's a challenge for carriers and like we are, because we have to manage this traffic. We have also to invest in the networks, and this clearly raises the question of the business model of the mobile data.
Just on the infrastructure, in the US there has been some problems. Network went down or were too slow in some cities. In Europe, we haven't heard about those kind of issues really yet. Is the network in France big enough to take in all this growth in data today, or do you...
Yes, definitely yes. We have invested in the 3G Plus network quite heavily in the past 3, 4, 5 years. All of us, Orange, of course, which has the best 3G network in France today, but the other operators also. And we don't have any problems in terms of managing the traffic today. But clearly we have to anticipate the future. As I mentioned, 10 times more traffic in 2 years' time. It's huge, and so we have to prepare the next generation, especially the 4G and LTE equipment. As you probably know, in 2011 there will be
auctions,
a tender, yes, to grant a spectrum for LTE, led by the French authorities, and this will be the first step for us to the deployment of 4G in mobile networks.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be vital for you to get a huge chunk of those 4G license, or?
Of course.
You think there will be room for everybody, or for operators, for telecommunication companies on the licenses that are coming on
we don't know yet the details of the way the authorities are going to organize the tender. But what we know is that there will be probably 4 lots too big and too smaller, which means that given the fact that there are 4 players in the market, there should be something for everybody.
For everybody. And in terms of investment in LTE, the new generation mobile infrastructure, when are you expecting to have a network that will be up and running in a country like France?
When?
When, yeah.
If we suppose that the spectrum will be granted in 2011, we think that it will take probably between 18 months and 2 years to really begin the deployment of LTE equipments, which means that probably early 2013 we will have in some specific spots like big cities LTE equipments.
A lot of talks also were around the pricing structure. Data Mobile started with a flat fee, and today, since there is a huge increase and some people consume much more than others, there are talks about changing the price structure and the end of the unlimited, in a sense. What is the position of France Telecom on that issue?
Well, there is no doubt that we will have to adapt our pricing approach to this phenomenon, which is the explosion of the traffic in mobile data. So clearly, all telcos are working today on tariff plans that could give some an attractive access for our customers to mobile data uses. It could be based on yield management, and this is something which is maybe interesting to point out. In our business, I think that we are progressively going to switch from an unlimited approach, which has been the trademark of the market in, let's say, the past decade, to something which will be more sophisticated, based on yield management.
Yield management, you mean that you will always have access, but according to the hour and the traffic on the network, you will have slower access, for example?
Yes, you know, the network is a scarce resource, even if you have 2, 3, or 4 networks. And in face of a traffic explosion as what we see, clearly we have to be more efficient in the network management, and that will lead us to work on specific plans that will give a differentiated access according to quality of service and probably according the period of time in the day or in the week where you, for instance, upload and you have a high consumption of bandwidth.
Mm-hmm. So we might not end up paying much more, but we will end up living in a much more complicated environment for pricing structure.
It's not only a question of paying more. It's a question of adapting the behavior of everybody to a new situation where there are a lot of people wanting to go to the network in the same time and consuming a much larger part of the bandwidth, which is, once again, a scarce resource, and we are responsible for the resource. So we have to find the good ways today to make this fantastic dream, which is the digital new world, to be really accessible to the vast majority of people. And nobody can accept a situation where 10% of people are consuming 70% of the resource.
Which is the case today.
Yes.
With the growth of the iPad and many other platforms, we see more and more that the applications are becoming the driver for the customers, but also for the companies that sell equipment, they sell because they give access to applications. But a lot of the value is moving from telecommunication vendors to the application world. Do you feel like you're in some kind of a trap and that you might become only a big pipe for selling access to where the value will be in the very near future?
We have pipes, but we are not pipes. We are a lot more than pipes, and we do contribute to applications development by creating our own applications. For instance, the TV on mobile phone is one of the most successful applications created by Orange, and you can buy it in App Store for an iPhone or in any kind of App Store at Android, for instance. So the first point is that we bring our own contribution to the development of application. And at the same time, what is interesting in applications is that it is based on diversity. It is based on the idea that, in fact, everybody, or nearly everybody in the world, can create its own application and sell it. Now, we have to be realistic. The revenue, which is really drawn from application, is a very marginal revenue, even for Apple or other service providers. So it is not, in terms of business model and balance, it is not a substantial issue. But the point is that as telcos, we want to be contributors to the innovation and new services. And then there is maybe another point that I would like to emphasize, which is that you have two kinds of services. You have, as we say, over-the-top services, but you are going to have more and more in-network services, which means that, in fact, only the telcos, as we are, will have the capacity to bring those new in-network services based on the SIM card, for instance, or on the NFC technology and a lot of other
like electronic
interesting ways. And that, in fact, as telcos, and because we are managing networks, we will be able to bring a new category of services, enhancing the communication experience, which will be a new addition to the digital creativity.
In terms of application, are you also working with the developers community? Are you also investing in some startups to try to help them create new application? Do you think that it might make sense for you to be some kind of small venture capitalist in this world? Or?
Yes, we have a fund. We have created a fund that is trying to identify good teams, especially in the application developers world. And we invest in China, a little bit in the Silicon Valley. But we have our own teams of developers. For instance, in Shanghai, we have 40 people that are creating applications for Android-based phones. So we are both investors and players ourselves.
At the same time, you also want to be in the advertising business. You want to sell advertising on your platforms, on mobile phone, on internet. In this world, I think you might be facing very often Google. Do you think that you have enough scale, in a sense, or enough expertise in this field to fight against Google?
You know, we are humble and modest. Clearly, Google is the number one, by far, player in the world in having proving its capacity to monetize and to build a business model based on advertising. So we don't have the ambition to compete with Google on that particular field. But in the same time, Google is going to face some problems that we knew in the past, which is to develop when you have a more or less monopolistic position.
You mean in terms of regulation?
Sorry?
Regulation?
Yes, it's the beginning for us of problems, I would say. But when you have a 95 or 97% market share in a specific place, it's not sustainable.
If at the beginning of last month, in October, you met in Paris with the CEOs of other telcos, and this meeting was also presented as anti-Apple or anti-iPhone. You wanted to create your own operating system for mobile phone. Do you think there is a realistic chance that the mobile communication company will be able to create their own ecosystem like this?
The purpose was clearly not to enter into a kind of war against Apple or Google. Apple and Google are very highly considered players and contributors to the economy. And we have been very happy to work with Apple and with Google in the development of digital economy. So there is no coalition of bad people entering into a kind of war against them. But in the same time, we are in a fast-changing ecosystem, and we find, all 5 of us, that there is some need to be more coherent, to exchange more in between operators, because we are going to face common challenges in the future, and clearly we will have also to develop cooperations between us. Let's take just an example, which is the issue of network sharing. Today we have a constant pressure on our cost structure to be more effective in the way we manage our assets and our networks. And clearly, we will have to develop cooperations between us in the respect, of course, of competition rules, by sharing, in some places, our networks, or by cooperating also in innovation, in developing new services, those in-network services that I mentioned a few minutes ago.
It's more cooperation than a coalition.
Yes, it's a cooperation, but it's also a message, which means that first, we still exist. Mm-hmm. We are able to talk within each other. We have a common view on the way the landscape is progressively evolving. We're facing the same challenges, and we are prepared to take maybe a more, how can I say, not aggressive, but a more proactive, yes, and initiatives in the future. Let's just take an example, which is the GSMA, the professional organization of GSM in the world. We have clearly decided to be more present in the GSMA, and the first
meeting
translation of this is the election yesterday of a new chairman for GSMA, who is one of the CEOs of the 5 big telcos, Franco Bernabé, who is the CEO of Telecom Italia. So this is just to say that we are not naive. We are looking at everything that's going on in this world, and there are probably much more interesting things for our customers to come from the telcos by developing cooperations between us.
Stephane Richard, thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you.